Hello, my beautiful human. Welcome back to the She Did It Anyway podcast. I am so excited for you to listen to today's episode. I have been on this journey of reinventing myself, and I've spoken to so many of you that are finding yourself in a place where maybe you're feeling unworthy, maybe you're feeling not grounded, you're not aligned with what you're doing. And girl, I feel the same exact way, and I am on a mission to really be able to scale my business, nurture myself, nurture my family, be the best mom that I can possibly be the best friend that I can possibly be. And I can't do that without being grounded. And so for our guest today, I have Regina Lawrence, and we are going to be talking all things breathwork, being grounded, sex, dating, business growth, trauma, all the things. And I'm really, really excited for you to take some time to listen to this episode. She gave so many nuggets about things that you can do in your day when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and maybe just not feeling like yourself. I will share all the things in the show notes, but I do want to give her a little bit of an intro before we dive in. Regina Lawrence, Esquire, is a former trial attorney and law school professor turned soulful business consultant, social media agency owner, and she's the host of All the Things with Regina Lawrence podcast. And she's also a breathwork and sound bath practitioner. I am so excited for you to dive into this episode and take all of the beliefs and nuggets that you need. Make sure, as always, tag me, tag Regina. What's your biggest takeaway? If you find yourself doing the techniques that she teaches you in this podcast, tag us. We'll do it together. Love you. Let's dive in. Hello, my beautiful human. I am so excited for you to dive into today's episode. Regina Lawrence, welcome to the She Did It Anyway podcast. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, of course. So we met, last year? We met last year, and before I have you introduce yourself, I always preface that I am not this like woo person, but I actually am, which is very, very funny to think. But I'm not this woo-woo person. That's like the story that I was telling. And you did breath work, which is something that I've never heard of before. My first experience with breath work with you was 10 minutes in a room, and I was sitting up, and I remember like I went numb and I stopped immediately and just like was starting to breathe normal. And I was like, ooh, I'm not sure if I was ready for that. And then I took a session with you, and we'll talk about how transformative it is during the episode. But like, it completely changed the way that I function, the way that I show up. I went home and I was telling Matt about it. He's like, I want to do it. Like, it is just something that I don't know how I lived 30 years without doing it. So before we dive in, I want to hear about who you are, what you do, all the things, and how you got here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go from there.
Okay, so who I am and what I do a lot of things. I am a retired trial attorney and law school professor. I practiced for 7 years, taught for 3.5 of those 7. Left that, became a business coach and consultant, and that morphed into having a social media marketing agency called All the Things Social, where we work with solopreneurs and small businesses on creating aligned content to grow their brands online. I'm also a breathwork practitioner and sound healing practitioner, and I'm certified in Reiki. And I own a small product-based business called The Witch Kit, which is a small ceremonial kit so you can create ceremony in every moment of your life.
Insane. When we have our guests submit like the form so we can learn more about them, one of the things that I really prioritize is bringing women in that have experienced setbacks, have experienced adversities, and have pivoted and evolved and just like done all the things, right? And you are really like the epitome of that, of experiencing all those things and then doing it anyway. And so we have you, write this little blurb of what can you discuss when it comes to your setbacks or adversities, and really like what value can you provide to our listener. And you had written transitioning from law school to entrepreneurship, growing up in a family of addicts, moving across the country, starting my life brand new, the struggles of growing businesses as a single female with no male support. And I like to create a theme for the podcast that we record. And you have been the first guest that I'm like, I want to talk about all the things, pun intended. Like, because there's so much. There's
Yeah.
so much. And there's just this journey that you've gone through. And if anybody knows you, if you're even watching this, if you're hearing this, like you are just such a graceful, put together, spiritual, very like soothing human. For someone that has been, was a lawyer, practiced lawyer, owns a marketing agency, is this like high achieving, active female. You're so aligned and grounded. And so I want to talk about really like just the beginning of all of this, talk a little bit about your upbringing, talk about the things that maybe could have held you back from being the person that you are today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. Like being an aligned, grounded woman is not the state in which I came into this world. This is like a learned way of being from really regulating my nervous system. So I am the youngest girl of 9 children. I have a younger brother. We're all from the same mom and dad, grew up on the East Coast. And I grew up with 7 of my 9 siblings having some sort of addiction issue. And me not being one of them, but as a child in a home of addiction, I was always the codependent fixer and pleaser. So type A, wanted to be the good girl, get everything right. I also always felt like a black sheep in my family. Like whatever they're doing, love you guys, but I want a completely different life. And so none of my sisters are college educated. I put myself through college. And then I was like, okay, like in my mind back in the day, I was like, how do I make $100,000? That was like the number, right? And it's funny now when I think about it, but that was the goal. And it was like, you can become a lawyer. And so I just set my mind on going to law school and put myself through law school. And then graduated from law school and got my master's of law. And just kind of like pushed and pushed and pushed and wanted to do all the things in law. Wanted to be the best, but was always putting a lot of pressure on myself. And so I am in my legal career. I was about 30 years old, probably 30, 31. And I had this pivotal moment in my office where I have a partner that I had been living with and had been with for almost 7 years. I had the job that I wanted. I was climbing the ranks in the law firm. I was teaching at a top 100 law school in the country on the East Coast. And I had this like full breakdown in my office on my office floor. And I laid on my office floor. I was in a pencil skirt and a pair of Louboutins. I had my arms stretched out and I just cried. And I put a headspace meditation in because I was like starting to dabble in meditation. And I remember hearing this voice say, your life doesn't have to be this hard. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I remember hearing, you got to fucking figure it out. And that moment catapulted me into this insane journey of, it started with self-development. It started with like Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza and hiring a business and life coach to realizing, oh my gosh, like this is the way I am. I live in a constant state of stress and anxiety. Like how I was when I was a lawyer was just, I always describe it like spinning, like frenetic energy, round and round and round and round. I lived on Starbucks coffee, chocolate covered espresso beans, and a fucking dream, baby. like that was my life. I was crazy. And it's funny when I think back to it. And I just had this moment and I was like, you have to change your whole fucking life and you can do it. And so that's where it started. And I realized I didn't want to practice law anymore. I was like, I can make more money, work maybe less hours, which is funny now because I own 3 businesses, and have more fulfillment. Like when I did that ROI equation, I was like, I don't want to do this. So from that moment on my office floor, it took 3 years for me to transition out of law. And I like set my life on fire, which I don't recommend for all people to do. I had to set it on fire and just like dove into entrepreneurship.
It's crazy because you said you were 30, 31.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine starting my life over at 30 and 31, which is interesting because I know myself more now than I did in my 20s, but in my 20s, I thought I was so behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I needed to be at a specific space when I was in my 20s, in a specific like area in my life, living, married, like all the things.
Yep.
And I remember now, again, being 31, and I'm like, wow, I'm like I have so much to learn. There's so much I want to do. There's like, and I'm in this phase where I keep saying like, I just want to reinvent who I am. I want to reinvent my beliefs and my thoughts and my feelings and how I show up and what I wear and like what people know me for. Like, I want to start over.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people in their 30s would say it's too late. Like, it's too late to do that.
Yeah.
And you also said something that really stuck with me of like, this is how you have to live. Like, you don't have to live that way.
No.
People don't understand that. And I don't know. I don't know if you know this. So I went to school for criminal justice. And I did my internship at the maximum prison in Cranston, Rhode Island. And I had all of these aspirations to translate Arabic for the FBI because I speak fluent Arabic. And I loved my law classes. I loved everything about it. And I did my criminal justice or my internship, and it was like, this was not for me.
Yeah.
I wear my heart on my sleeve. I am bubbly. I'm in hot pink right now. Like, that's just who I am.
Right.
And so I had to not be that person when I was doing those things. And I quickly pivoted to marketing. But again, at that point, I was like, I can't believe I'm changing careers. I was 20 and I thought it was too late. Like, I thought I couldn't. And so for you to just transform your whole entire life off of this like meltdown that you had on the office floor in your Louboutins, in your pencil skirt is mind-blowing to me without knowing a guarantee that it was going to work.
Well, we're so conditioned that like you pick a career path and that is your life. You pick a partner, a husband, a wife, significant other, that's your life. And that's not really how it works. And that's why people get divorced so often. That's why people have, what the fuck is a midlife crisis? Like, if you are living this wildly fulfilling life, you're not going to have a midlife crisis, right? And so I had this wild awakening, right? Well, and I've had two of these. I was engaged when I was in law school. I was like, I was planning my wedding, like was going to marry this guy. And then 2 months before we broke up, I woke up in the middle of the night and it was like, you don't have to marry him. You can call off the whole wedding. And
Stop.
You don't have to do this.
You called it off?
Oh yeah, I called it off. But I had that realization, like, you have a choice in this lifetime. So that was the first like awakening. And then it was like, you don't have to be a lawyer. So what if you went to law school? Like, what did you gain from this? How are you better? How are you different? What has this done for you? And how can you walk away from it? But we're so conditioned to be like, you chose this husband, you chose this job, baby, you are stuck for life, and you're not. You actually have a choice in how to change your life. You have a choice in how to change your thoughts. We can recreate our thoughts, every single thought at a time. It just takes time and energy and effort and like diligence.
Where does someone start?
When I started reprogramming the way I thought, I started to take notice of how I spoke to myself in my head, because the words that we say and the thoughts that we think become the outcome of our life.
Say that again.
The words that we say and the thoughts that we think become the outcome of our life. And that quiet talk track that is in the subconscious is affecting every part of your reality, because words and thoughts in the human body have a vibration. And that vibration is felt by the body. And when it's felt by the body, it's felt by you. That's why you walk in a room. And if somebody's anxious or panicked, you walk in and you're like, yo, you good? Are you okay? You know? And so we just have to first start to slow down. I always say, find the white space and just notice. How do I talk to myself? How do I speak to myself in my brain? How do I sarcastically joke about myself? So for me, because I was always like, I identified as like a hot mess. I'm like, I'm a hot mess. I'm just such a hot mess, right? And I started to notice how I would talk about myself. And I would not say kind things to myself all the time. And I would put this insane pressure on myself to be something that was just unattainable. I didn't really know that until I started to notice it. And then I started to be like, okay, I am never going to say an unkind thing about myself again. And so I'd be going through my day and I'd be like, oh my God, you're such a fucking idiot. And then I would be like, nope, you're not. That wasn't the best life decision you ever made, Regina, but you are not an idiot. And this will be okay. And so it started like thought by thought. And I had a coach that I worked with one-on-one, who I would be on a call with him, and he would ask a question and I'd go, I don't know, maybe. And he'd be like, see, even the way that you responded to that question and your use of the word maybe, is it a yes or a no? Are you committed or not? And so it started to retrain how I spoke and thought. So one word, one sentence, one thought at a time in your own body is where you start.
Wow. I feel like I can end the conversation now because it was just so good. Truly, because I that's harder than you think, right? And we have gone our whole life talking. Like I say this all the time. I'll be like, I'm just not good at that. I can't figure that out, or that's too hard, or it's just insane. Or I'll say like, you know, it is saying things like, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or "I feel like shit," or "I'm so fat," or you know what I mean? Like, or like joking about, I'm such a whale. I could eat a whole thing," you know. And you're literally like bashing yourself.
Yeah.
And I was talking about it in an episode that I had recorded about how I use humor to deal with trauma.
Same.
That's just how I am. Like I
Yeah.
like crack up about things that are like I should be in a mental institute that I have experienced, like truly.
Yeah.
And I know that so many people deal with trauma differently, but I actually don't think humor is the right way because it's like it's not funny.
Right.
It's not funny. You're kind of like hurting yourself when you're doing that. And so just talking about like the experience that you've experienced with trauma in your life. Now, okay, so you pivoted your career. When did you start diving into and you started thinking about your thoughts? When did you start thinking about like breath work and like what was the transition? Like how did you become the spiritual person that you are now?
So I leave my practice. I'm diving into more personal development mindset kind of work, and just started to have a curiosity about spirituality. I had a lot of spiritual experiences as a little kid and didn't understand them.
Like what?
I used to see my angels when I was a kid. I used to have dreams that would happen. My little brother and I would both have the same dream and see something happening in front of us. And we would whisper to each other, this is going to happen. And we would see it. And we didn't know why it would happen. Right. So really strong, intuitive, psychic pings as a kid. Totally suppressed it from a super conservative Catholic family. Like that is not of God, you know. And then before I moved to Arizona, I had left practice or was thinking about leaving, and I met this tarot card reader named Regan. And my aversion to spirituality was that there is a stereotypical way that spiritual women look and smell and show up, and it's not me. Like they smell like patchouli, they wear like mom clothes, and they look unkempt, and that's not me. I am not that kind of girl. And so I was like, that whole tribe of like smelly hippie is not me. And so I met this girl, this tarot card reader named Regan in Philly. And she is this tall, beautiful, the biggest boobs you've ever seen, and just like owns her sexuality and sensuality. And I started following her on Instagram. She had this fucking hilarious Instagram account where she still does, where she shares like screenshots from dating apps of her conversations with men. And she's a savage and she's like spiritual. So I started going to her for tarot and Reiki. And I was like, this bitch is so cool. And she's so intuitive and so spiritual.
Mm.
And I remember thinking about leaving Philadelphia, and she said, you need to go out west. The energy on the East Coast is too heavy for you and it's going to hold you down. You need to go to the sunlight. You need to live in the sun. And I listened to her and followed that. But Regan was like my entry point, my gateway to spirituality friend.
So crazy.
And then when I moved to Arizona, I was like really intentionally calling in like my spiritual best friends. And one of my best friends who I met within my first few weeks here is named Ksenia. And she is this Russian goddess of a woman. Like you see her and like stop in your tracks. She's so beautiful, covered in tattoos. Her man is like an incredible tattoo artist, and she's a shaman. And I got to know her. She's been sober now for 13 years and it had this wild animal past. And so we really connected over addiction, like me coming from a family of addiction. And she was like, hey, babe, I'm having a shamanic breath work. You should come. I'm like, okay, like new friend. What the fuck is shamanic breath work? I'll go.
No, but literally, what is it?
Literally, well, so like it's similar to the breath work that you do with me.
Okay.
So she practices shamanism, which is really connected to the earth, and she connects with like your guides and your ancestors and your teachers, and she plays the drum, and she's just this like wild lady. So she was like, we're actually having a cacao ceremony with shamanic breathwork. And I'm like, what the fuck is cacao? Cacao is like the purest form of chocolate.
Yeah.
And in South American cultures, it's like they call it like heart medicine. It like really opens up your heart chakra. And so when you drink a little bit of cacao before you go into breath work, you're like really relaxed.
Oh my God, it sounds amazing. Okay, go.
So I go to this breathwork class and it's like 33 people in this like little room together doing breathwork. So I drop in and I get into the breathwork and all of a sudden, like I had this transcendental experience where I felt so connected to God and to the universe. I started to get all of this downloads of information about my life, about my family, about why I'm here. And then all of a sudden it was like, this is with your breath. And at this point, I had never done any psychedelic drugs at all. And so it was like a very psychedelic experience for me. And I was like, I don't know what just happened with my breath, but I'm going to keep doing this. And so every month, at least twice a month, I did a breathwork session with her for over a year.
Wow.
And that was like my entry point to breathwork.
So funny. So you were my entry point to really diving into spirituality. So I am Coptic Orthodox. I grew up in the church, and we still go to church on Sundays, not as consistent as we were, but it pivoted for me when I got pregnant because I felt like a lot of the things that I was going to church for was not what I was seeing when I needed the most support when I was 23, pregnant, single, like, right? Like people were like, wait a minute, this is just not what you're supposed to do. And I drifted away from church, and I realized like, okay, well, spirituality, religion, man-made rules at churches are completely different. Like they're not all the same. They don't go hand in hand. And so I say that I like drifted apart a little bit. I started going, but I was kind of going just to go. Like there was nothing there for me. But I did have times where I felt like I just wanted to pray, and I was still angry about how I experienced like love when I was pregnant and the lack there was of it. And so I, fast forward, I meet Matt, I work in corporate, I get laid off, I start my business, and I am like, go, 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 go. I love strategy. I love lists. I love creating. Like, I don't really take time to like breathe, at this point. And 3 years in, I go to this event. I see you walk in, you have this flowy dress, you have no bra on, and you have this massive hat, and you are just stunning. Like it felt like you opened the door and like this wind came in, like blew your hair back, and I was like, who the fuck is that? Like, and there was a point where I was like, oh, I can't talk to her. Like I'm not where she is. I am not in a space where I would have anything to say. And it was all of this self-doubt because of how you presented yourself. And then I find out how successful you are, and you have this agency, and then I find out that you do breath work, and you were like so spiritual and so calming and so loving. And I didn't know that you could be super high achieving and super, super, super successful and really fashionable and spiritual. Like I just didn't know you could do all of that.
Yeah.
It was really cool to just hear about like your experience and your introduction to it, because you were my introduction. Like after you, I was like, oh, I want to do this. I want to be more successful. I want to be more spiritual. I want to be more in tune with like who I am and how I show up and something bigger than me. And I do very much believe in God, and it made me want to pray more. Like it made me, and everybody meditates differently, but like it made me want to pray. It made me want to like be alone. It made me want to meditate, and it was really powerful. And so I experienced breathwork with you. And I remember leading into it, people were like, you're going to cry. And I'm like, I don't want to cry. Like, I don't want to cry. I'm here for a mastermind. Like, tell me how to grow my goddamn business.
Yeah.
I don't want to cry. Like, I've lived with trauma my whole entire life. Like, I don't know who I would be without this trauma. Like, my trauma is what makes me. And those are the things that I would always say to myself. And so I went to breathwork, and it fucked me up.
Yeah.
Like 6 a.m. and I am weeping on the floor because I actually thought I was going to, and I know every session now, I've done so many with you, but the first session I was like flooded with these negative thoughts about myself, about not being good enough, not worthy enough, that I'm going to sabotage it. I started thinking about how I grew up, and like, you coming from a family of addicts, and you took control of your life, and you decided that's not going to be me. I also felt like, okay, what if I'm financially unstable my whole life? What if this is just history repeating itself? And so those were the downloads that I got from breath work. And then again, transition, or fast forward, I took another one and it was so positive. And then I took another one and I was like rolling over writing business notes. And so it's amazing how different experiences, a different experience you can have every single time, all by breathing.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Every time is different. Like even now, I've done so much breath work. I've received so much breath work, and I've also facilitated so much breath work. And it is different every single time. And whenever you go in with an expectation of what you want, you usually never get that. Like I always say, like, you get what the body wants to give you. Like the body is infinitely brilliant and knows how to process trauma and how to move things out of the body in a way that our brain gets in the way of. Because our human brain, like you mentioned a few minutes ago, my trauma is my identity. Like my trauma was my identity. I was the girl who made it from a drug addict family. Like I held on to that. I had my grit because of that. I was a fucking tough attorney because of that. And so we go into breath work and we're like, no, I want to hold on to this stuff. And I had a session the other week with a good friend of mine, and she had set an intention to let certain things go. And there was a point during breath where she was breathing and she was like, no, in between her breaths. And she told me later, all those things I wanted to let go of, they were gone. And I was trying to get them back. And I was like, yeah, they're gone. You got to let them go, baby. You
got to let them go. So you start doing breath work and you realize obviously you love it. And what was the transition from that to adding the marketing agency?
So the marketing agency started first. So I had the agency first and was growing the agency, but I had a dream. So when I was growing my agency, I was doing a lot of business coaching and consulting. And I thought I wanted to grow the business coaching strategy side of the business and not really grow the agency. And then in my daily prayer and meditation, I was praying for more money, more abundance to grow my business. I want to be a really successful business coach and strategist. And social media clients kept showing up. And I was like, what the fuck? Like this stupid agency, and at that point I had one other person working with me. It wasn't like a full agency. And then I was like, oh, I'm asking for it. And it's just not coming through the avenue that I want it to come through. And I was like, what if I grew this agency? What if I hired out every role and brought people in to run it? And so the agency was the first thing. And then I discovered breath work. And I had gotten to the point with the agency, though, where the agency was funding my whole life, that I could dive into breath work. So my whole brand on social media my personal brand is breathwork and sound healing, because the agency has afforded me a life where I could focus wholly on that brand.
That's so interesting. I had no idea. How big is your agency now?
We have 7 people.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So many clients.
You
focus on social media.
We focus on social media, organic social media marketing.
And you do still business coaching?
I do. Yeah. It has to be it's got to be, I'm a certain mix of human, and it's got to be somebody that likes that mix. I am still I'm very tough. I'm very straightforward. I'm to the point with business, but I'm also soft-loving and spiritual. So it's got to be that right mix of a human.
Which I love that. That's why I love working with you, is because I need the two. Mm-hmm. I think the blend of the two is really amazing. So you start diving into breath work. You realize it's just so transformative. I had you as a guest for the retreat that we hosted, and you did breathwork and sound bath, and I didn't participate. Being on the other side of it, I didn't realize how much energy you receive, how much. I mean, I was crying watching these women lay down and see the stress leaving their body. It was the wildest thing that I've ever experienced. I think experiencing it that way is not something that I had anticipated. You do that every time. At any point, did you feel like this is too much? I can't or is this just, do you feel like this is what you were made to do?
I was made to do this. One of my best guy friends who taught me how to be a breathwork practitioner, Steven, he said, you have tremendous capacity to hold space for humans in a way that other people don't. And when I'm in those spaces and there's a lot of energy and a lot of things moving, like there are moments, like I had a breath work for a bunch of women. It was a female rage breath work. So I was teaching women how to tap into their voice and their rage. And there was this moment where I looked through the room of 20 women and I was like, wow, this is a lot. And I was like, nah, girl, you got it. This is what you came here to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found myself having to walk away because I was like, this is just so much. I couldn't do it. A lot of the women that do listen to us are high achieving, super ambitious women that are maybe have not done breath work, maybe think it's a little too woo-woo for them. I'd love to know from you, what are things that they can start doing? Like, what is something that, or why do they need breath work? Why do they need meditation? Why does everybody need that? How does it like translate into their career growth, their sexuality, their ability to be better parents and better wives and husbands and all the things?
So there is a belief that people think that breath work is really woo-woo, and it's actually not. It can be made woo. People who are spiritual often get into breath work because breath work is often tied to like yoga and like traditions of the East. Breath work is actually deeply science-based, and it actually helps you regulate your nervous system. So the way that we breathe has a tremendous impact on our nervous system. Unlike any other function in the body, we can actually control our breath. We can control our heartbeat. We can't control our liver function, right? But we can modify and adjust our breath. Because we have that power, most of us don't know how to breathe right. So most of us have become mouth breathers. Mouth breathing spikes your nervous system. Nose breathing brings your nervous system down. Why is it important to regulate your nervous system? Your nervous system is actually running the show all the time. So if you're somebody who's deeply anxious and stressed, which was my identity for most of my life, your nervous system is fried. If you're somebody who has a lot of trauma that has gone through your life, a lot of it, we say, gets stored in the body because you've never processed it. You've never closed those loops. So breath work is actually a way where the type of breath I do, we start with mouth breathing for a period of time. We spike the nervous system, just like a good workout. When you start working out, you spike the nervous system. And then we bring the nervous system back down with nose breathing. When you spike the nervous system, though, it allows you to open up space where maybe if there's trauma that hasn't been dealt with, it can come to the forefront. If there's thoughts in the subconscious mind, because remember, the conscious mind is always running the show, it kind of allows the conscious mind to take a back seat and it allows things to come forward. You're a great example. The first time you did breath work with me, all of these thoughts came forward. Those are self-doubting, like little Marina thoughts that are living in the background and are having an impact on your life that you didn't know they were there. Then you have another breathwork experience where all of a sudden, I like to say, you tapped into entrepreneurial consciousness, where your conscious mind took a break and all of a sudden you were like, holy shit, I have all these great ideas for what I want to do in my business and my life. I got to write them down, right? And so if anybody is hesitant about breathwork because they're like, oh, like I'm a Christian or it's too woo-woo, it actually isn't. And so for me, when I do breath work, I actually cater it. If I'm with someone who's super woo and a very new age, I'll cater it for them. If I'm with people who are not, it's a breathing class. It's a breathing exercise that we're doing to help you regulate your nervous system.
Do you have any ways of breathing that you can teach our listener now of like, if I'm feeling really anxious or maybe I'm like just at work, I'm really stressed out, my shoulders are hunched over, I'm just like so annoyed at everything, maybe I'm like feeling depressed, like is there something that you can do, or not even, maybe it's not even breath, but like something that you can do to calm yourself down, get yourself out of your own way?
So I always say you need to change your state. Okay, so if you're at work and you have the ability to do this, if you can get up and shake your body out, move your body out, jump, shake, move it out, and then sit down and do deep breathing in and out of the nose. So if you breathe in 4 counts through the nose, hold the breath 4 counts, let it out through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. In through the nose, 4, hold 4, out for 4. If you do that for a couple minutes, that will bring your nervous system back down. If you're somebody who tends to get stressed at work during the day, start to get into the habit of keeping your lips closed and only breathing through your nose when you're working.
Mm.
I realized that I exclusively during the day breathe. I used to be a mouth breather.
Our editing team for this is like, Regina, stop breathing so loud.
I used to breathe through my mouth, or I get stressed. And like a lot of times when we're stressed, the first thing we do is hold our breath, which is where like panic attacks come because you're holding your breath, right?
Yeah.
And so start to get comfortable with with nose breathing through your nose. Something else that helps to regulate and calm the nervous system is singing.
Mm.
You can't be in an anxious, stressed state when you are singing.
Mm.
So getting into the habit of like when you're having a tough day at work and you're driving home from work, sing your heart out the whole car ride home. That helps like recalibrate your nervous system.
When people are doing breath work, like I said, like crying, singing, yelling, like all the things. It's so crazy to see like the release of that, how powerful that release is. After it, I leave and I'm like, I can do all of the things. The problem is sometimes I feel like I can't sustain that feeling. I can't sustain that motivation. I can't sustain that like keep going. Like what do you recommend for that? Is it just more breath work? Is it changing your habits? Like what are some of the things that you do in your day that allow you to sustain this business that you have, the drive that you have, again, you tapping into that mindset where you are catching yourself when you're speaking? Like how do you program yourself to do that? Is it just time?
It just takes time, and it's one thing at a time. Everything I do in my life now, I am very hyper conscious of how to regulate my nervous system. So I used to have I didn't have an eating disorder, but I had a lot of disordered eating. And so eating breakfast when you wake up in the morning within 30 minutes of waking up serves your nervous system, right? Because whenever we're stressed and anxious, at least for me, the first thing that I want to do is like not eat. Caffeine. Don't drink caffeine on an empty stomach. It will spike your nervous system and it will spike your cortisol. Moving your body every single day, whether it's taking long walks, going to the gym, especially for women, if you struggle with stress and anxiety, be conscious of the workouts that spike your nervous system. HIIT workouts, girlfriends, like they fuck your nervous system and they spike your cortisol.
Yeah.
Taking time to breathe and connect with yourself. I'm a big proponent of taking salt baths, taking a bath, finding my breath, calming myself down. And it's just these little things. Like none of these are like things that are like life-changing, but the culmination of doing all of these things together have a profound impact on your nervous system, which then help you to stay calm. But just like with any new habit, I always think of like our bodies as like we have to learn how to date ourselves because we think we know ourselves because we've been in this body for however many years we've been alive, but we don't actually know ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we start to have to get to know ourselves, start to recognize those patterns and thoughts that we're thinking, maybe start to journal about them. Journal, if things are coming up for you, how are you reframing the talk track in your brain? But it's just these like little things you do, picking one or two, committing to them, and then adding a few more in.
I love that so much. And I feel like one, just taking what you said about 4-4-4 when you're breathing, that is super powerful. The catching your thoughts, like reframing it is really a game changer. I am working very hard on doing that just because you've been doing it for so long. We've been talking a certain way to ourselves for so long. And just we've been living a certain way for so long. And I'm so inspired by you just saying like taking control and changing that. It's funny about the coffee too. Like I was walking in the mall. I had only had coffee all day yesterday. And I literally felt like I was going to have a panic attack. I was like, I haven't had anything besides coffee all day.
Yeah.
Like I was freaking out. You gave me this like soft introduction, is that what it is, to dating. So you had said you were engaged in college.
In law school.
You broke off the engagement. You changed your whole entire life over the years, and you seem like if I was a man, I would be very intimidated dating you. Like, I just think you have your shit together. What does that look like for the single women that are super successful like you? Like, what does dating look like?
I think we need to be mindful of the fact that as we are becoming successful, as we are up leveling our lives, we are shifting energetically in a way where we can't expect the masses of men to be potential partners anymore. Like, I have dated so much when I moved to Arizona. It's just easy. It's easier to date than to make friends.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Arizona and was going on lots of dates. And what I have realized is like the person that's going to be for me is like, he's not like a common dude I'm going to find on a dating app. He's just not, you know.
What is he like?
The guy that I'm going to be with is an entrepreneur. I can't be with a man that's not an entrepreneur and doesn't have that drive and understanding. They have to be so motivated to be better, to do better, to like just become like the highest, best version of themselves. That like those things are really important for me. They also have to be really fucking hot and funny. And like, you know what I mean? Like there's other things. Like I have to think they're like a sexy ass man.
Yeah.
They don't need to be as spiritual as I am, but they need to be really respectful and be like, you are like this woman that you are because of those beliefs that you hold. And I respect and honor that. It's like so important for me.
Do you ever get sad that you're not in a relationship right now?
Yes, all the time. I'm like, where's my fucking husband?
Oh, you do?
Oh, I say it all the time. Where's my husband?
Oh, I can't picture you being sad.
Yeah, I get sad about it.
Do you know why I can't picture it? So when we were talking at the retreat, you were talking about your dating life and you just gave these guys so much grace. Like, I remember when I was single and I went on a shitty date, I was like, F this guy, he sucked. Da, 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 da. Like, and you were like, he's just not my person, but I hope that he finds someone for him. And I was like, what? I've never said that about anybody. Like, it's just like not me.
I just feel like every person I meet serves a purpose. There's a purpose and a lesson in every person I meet. And so like the guys that I've met, like there's been a purpose, there has been a lesson. There's been another, like I've had a lot of great sexual experiences being single. And so like that's just another layer of learning, you know, from these men. But it is challenging. Like there was one guy who I really, really liked, and we're actually good friends now. And he said to me, I will never be the man that you fully desire and deserve. He's like, because I've never met a woman like you. And I know I will never be the man you desire and deserve wholly. And a lot of men I meet feel like that about me, which is sad. Like it makes me sad at times in the moment when it's happening, because it's like, oh, fuck. But like, this is who I am.
Does it ever make you feel like you want to change who you are? You want to be less than?
It used to. It doesn't anymore. Like, this is who I am, and I'm becoming more and more of this. Like I'm on a train track of becoming more and more of this woman, and I can't go back. I can't unsee what I've seen, you know? Like it's not happening, you know?
Yeah.
And I have ultimate faith and trust that my person, like, and it's been confirmed to me by so many different people I've worked with, that like he is going to see me working and doing the things I'm doing in this lifetime. And he's going to be like, that girl, that's it. She's mine. And I will settle for no less than that.
What do you do on the days that you are really sad?
I try to just fill it with things that I like love to do. I have the best friends and like friendships that are like family to me. And so I spend a lot of time with them. And it just reminds me of like, I'm loved. Like I used to seek a partner as a way of fulfilling myself. But like I wholly and truly believe I contain all the love I need for myself inside my body and in my person. And unless somebody's going to meet me like where I'm at, it's just not worth my time, love, and energy.
What are some like insecurities that you feel like you struggle with, and how do you work to get past those insecurities?
I struggle with my body a lot. I just was a little girl that was born with a big butt. And so I have had a lifetime struggle with my body and trying to learn to love my body. And like, I went through most of my life really punishing my body. And now I'm in a season of like, how do I nurture my body? How do I love my body? How do I give it, you know?
How do you love it? How do you nurture it? What are the things that you do?
A lot of it has been like restructuring the way I eat, the way I move my body, the way I work out, just everything like nutrition wise. Like, how do I honor this vessel so I can heal? Because trauma, deeply traumatic instances in our life have an impact on our physical body. So my gut has been a mess since I was a little kid. I have PCOS, I have hormonal issues. I think a lot of that is linked to the trauma I had in my childhood. And so it's really honoring and loving my body through movement, nutrition, my daily practices and self-care, breath work.
When you wake up, walk us through, like, wake up. What do you do?
I wake up in the morning. I say hello to all my animals. I actually get up and go and sit on the toilet, and they all come in and sit around me and stare at me.
Worst nightmare.
Stare at me to feed them. And then I go into the kitchen, I feed everyone, and then I make myself a decaf coffee in the morning.
I was listening to your podcast episode that you sent me, and every 5 seconds you're talking, I was like, there's no way I will never switch to decaf. Like, that is the only joy that I have in my life. Like, you want me to take that away? and so, yeah. Okay. So decaf, we'll talk about that after.
We'll talk about the decaf. I knew you were going to listen to that episode. I sent it to you on purpose.
It triggered me so much. I was just like, hang up. I'm done with this episode.
I knew you were going to read. That's why I sent it to you. I also thought I was funny in it. And I was like, she'll get a kick out of this.
No, it was a really, really good episode. Your whole podcast is amazing. I just like love how free you are about talking about it. But okay, you take your decaf.
So I get up, I have my decaf. I go into my office, and my office is also where like my sound bowls, all my instruments are. So I'll meditate in there. I'll read like a couple chapters of a book I'm reading right now.
Fiction or nonfiction?
The morning book is usually something spiritual.
Okay.
So this one is like all written by a woman who's a psychic medium, and it's like all levels of spirituality, how to develop your gifts. So I'll get up, I'll go read a little bit. I have this tobacco called hape, finely ground tobacco, that you ingest it through your nose. And so I'll sit with that and then go into a little bit of meditation. And then I jump into work.
Yeah.
Like I jump right in. My laptop and computer is set up in my office. I'll get on my computer. I have assistants overseas. So I'll like check in with the team, get on my computer. I'll probably do like an hour or two of work, and then I'll go to a gym workout in the morning, or I'll take the dog for a long walk around the lake.
You were saying yesterday that someone heard you on a work call and they were like, whoa, like I've never heard you talk like this or act like this. It's so interesting to me that you can be both this like give this like masculine energy when it comes to work and like focus and all of the things, and then also again be so in tune with who you are, your body, your sexuality, the way you live, all of the things. I don't think it's easy to do that.
It's not easy to do that.
Does it ever get exhausting having to shift, or do you feel like it's just like this natural flow between?
It depends on the day. Some days there's a flow. There was one day though last week where I was doing podcast episodes back to back, and then for my podcast, and then I had a breathwork session at night that I held, my community breathwork, and I was done and I was exhausted. Like that shift from like agency owner in the morning, and then podcaster in the afternoon, and then breathworker at night. I was like, I went out to dinner with one of my best friends, and I was like, I need a cocktail.
Yeah, I need
a piece of pizza. I need a cocktail. Like I need to calm down.
Have you ever been in a situation where people are not taking you seriously because maybe the way you look, and again, you hear breath work, you hear Reiki, you hear sound bath, like, and if you don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when it comes to agency, have you been in a predicament where people are just not taking you seriously?
It's interesting. In this phase of my life, not as much. In my earlier phase of life as an attorney, like I would have people not take me seriously all the time. But also the thing that gives me credibility, people don't take me seriously like at first when they hear social media agency. People think social media is like, oh, social media, it's so me, you know? They're like, oh, you're a social media manager? Yeah. Like, it's so annoying. And then if I throw in like, yeah, and I'm a breathwork and sound healing practitioner, they're like, oh, okay.
Like this bitch.
And then like if I casually throw in like, oh yeah, like in my law practice, they're like, you're a lawyer? That stops people dead in their tracks.
Does that bother you? Or do you feel like you like the clout that being a lawyer brings? I
just think it's like people's limited perceptions as humans. Like as a society, we think that certain careers are better than others. And for some reason, like people give lawyers more esteem And like, I am a lawyer. I went to law school with all those fucking bozos, you know, like most of them, like I really questioned like how they dressed themselves in the morning. I'm like, you are not a functioning human. Like, how did you put your clothes on and like drive a car here? And you're going to get me out of lawsuits?
Oh
like what?
Like you looked in the mirror and you said, this is it. And you walked out.
Like, yeah, like you did that. Like there were so many moments like that in my life. And so, but for some reason, people like esteem lawyers, like we're really good at reading and we're really good at analyzing things. Like, wow. I think most lawyers are the worst fucking people on the planet.
That's
they like,
so funny.
They drive me crazy. But people do, like they hear lawyer and it does give me credibility. And so even as an agency owner, when people hear that I'm a lawyer, they're more apt to work with me because they said they've worked with so many creatives that are strictly creatives and like they're not as reliable. But because I say Esquire, I am immediately more reliable and like they can trust me more in their eyes, which is so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like I completely get it. Even Matt, I was like reading him your bio and he's like, you know, again, I've talked about you for years.
Yeah.
Like, well, going on the second year now, but like, and I've never said that you were a lawyer. And the fact that I said you were a lawyer, he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, you've never been interested until I said she was a lawyer. And now you think she's like cool, you know, like now you'll take her seriously. And it actually annoyed me. That's why I wanted to ask you that, because I feel like that has to happen a lot. I get, it's like me being like, oh, I worked at Yahoo News and Totally. Like I'm flexing, you know? And so like, I completely understand why you do that. And I understand why people associate that with you, or like associate success or whatever credibility because of that. So me being new to breathwork, I'm 31, I'll be 32 in February. I'm in a stage in my life where my business is growing. I have a husband, a beautiful 7-year-old son, and I'm still have not completely tapped into who I am. I haven't completely tapped into like my sexuality and like how I want to show up and how I want to feel like amazing. And I'm in this phase where, like I said, I'm really trying to like reinvent myself, right? So I'm going to start with my thoughts, start with how I'm speaking and how I'm showing up. I want to do breath work more so I can really tap into these beliefs and the traumas that I've experienced and decide like what beliefs I want to keep and what beliefs I want to let go. It's very new to me because I'm not in a circle of people outside of you and the friends I've met through you, but like I don't have a lot of friends and family that have that. And I know a lot of my listeners are the same exact way. What are other things that I can do to really tap into my confidence, my sexuality? Like I keep using the sexuality thing mainly because I want to be able to feel amazing about myself, my body, how I show up, whether I am a size 4 or size 10, whether I am like in a gorgeous outfit or I have my hair tied with no makeup. Like, what are some things that I can do to help me like really tap into like the love that I have for myself?
I think the first thing you said about the way you talk to yourself, I think making space for yourself. Like, how often in your day-to-day or weekly life do you have space where it is quiet and there is nobody around and you can just be with yourself, right? We often are scared of the quiet and the white space because that's where that's where the shit comes up. That's why COVID and quarantine was so hard for people. People had to fucking sit with themselves. We don't know how we really feel about ourselves. We don't know what thoughts we really think about ourselves unless we're in the quiet. And then we can start to examine ourselves. So, for example, if you want to love yourself more, why don't you love yourself more? What is holding you back from that? What beliefs are in that space where love for yourself should be? What stories were told to you about beauty ideals and what things were said to you about your body that have caused you to put emphasis on not loving and adorning it, right? So that right there, that's where I always go back to for myself, and I sit in that space. And if somebody is listening and they don't know where to start, I think literally creating that space to sit with yourself and to write and to explore a little bit. Because it's not until you fully come to that place of love in yourself that you are going to want to explore your sexuality and your sensuality and step into that version of yourself.
I've said it before, you have inspired me or you have painted a picture that is very clear to people that you can be successful, be gorgeous, show up how you want to show up, not how people expect you to show up.
Yeah.
Be in tune with who you are, do the breath work, wear the hats, and be just like so authentically you, like unapologetically yourself.
Yeah.
And I love that. I want to do some rapid fire questions. What are you doubting about yourself currently and why?
I've had doubt about the growth of my agency and if I can do it. And the reason why I think I have those doubts is because it is a whole new beast that I'm learning to be a CEO, to have a whole team, and to scale and to not be the one that's in control of everything.
When have you given too much of yourself in a relationship? What did that look like and what lessons did you learn?
It's like every relationship I've ever been in up until this point. I'm like the codependent fixer. And so I would give too much of myself. And what would happen is instead of acting from a place of what is for Regina's highest good and what does Regina want in this lifetime, it was acting for a place of what is for the good of that other person and for the relationship. And so my lesson now is like, to focus on me first in this time of singleness, and then we can meet each other where we're at the same place.
I love that. What did the people who raised you teach you about love, and what lessons do you want to keep, and what lessons do you want to challenge?
One of the biggest things I was taught about love is just my mom is an unconditional lover. Like her love and her heart is so big and it runs so deep. But something I have challenged and have shifted is that I was not raised with boundaries. And so I have fierce boundaries around my time and around like who I spend that time with. And not everybody gets access to me, even if they are blood related to me.
I love that. That is something that I definitely need to work on. How can people find you? What are you doing right now? How can people work with you? How can they take breath work?
Yeah. I hang out on Instagram at Regina A. Lawrence. I'm starting to play on TikTok more at regina.lawrence. And you can breathe with me. You can go to breathewithregina.com. And I have a virtual breathwork membership where you can just drop in for one of the classes.
Wow. I love that you said you can breathe with me. Like that. Yeah. It's just like, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. But it's just like, come breathe with me. I will make sure to link all of that in the show notes. I adore you. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you introduced me to this new way of living, because it's totally changed the game for me, totally changed the way I show up for myself, my family, my kid, like my business, my clients, everything. So, how cool is it that I get to experience this? Like, so grateful for you. And thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yay. It was amazing. And don't forget, no matter what, she did it anyway.
You did it, Mom.